In this video, let's take a look at the tide feature. So to enter tide, you press the bottom left hand button twice, and then you have tide showing here. Now if you press the top left hand button, you have the moon. Today is the 10th of June. The number down here, 11, is the 11th day of this moon. I think it's called the age of the moon. When you press the bottom right hand button, this takes you through the phases of the moon. So on the 29th, the moon is half of a day old. The full moon is going to be on the 14th of June. So there you can see the full moon was the 14th of June.
One other feature that you can change if necessary, press top left, go to tide, scroll past the hour and the minutes,
and then you can press north or south for the moon. So if the moon is backwards, as it were, then you can just rotate it depending on whether you're north or south of the moon. We're north of the moon, so I keep it on where it's set.
The moon information is preset and cannot be adjusted. So let's take a look at the tides.
If you press the top button, now this is where things are a little bit more interesting, as it were. Now this is where you have your tide information. Now, if you press and hold top right, it'll start flashing for tide information, and it's actually wanting you to tell it when high tide is for your area. Now if you press and hold the two right hand buttons, that's reset it. That's the factory setting, and I'll explain that. So what that means now is that at 6 o'clock this morning, because there's no PM, the tide is over here. So it's just after low tide. And where this is set. So basically this is set for London GMT. So this tide is set for London. So if you want to know what the tide will be now, which is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in London, it will be low tide. All right, it's not exactly accurate, but it's not a million miles away. So you can see that low tide is 5 PM here, but you could set this to, to this. Although interestingly, when I looked at the tide time for London the other day, it was actually a little bit more accurate. Here for Exeter, it shows the next high tide is 3:30 PM. So what you do, if you want to set it, is you press top right, and then you get that flashing, and then you press bottom right until you get to 3 PM, and then you press bottom left, make the minutes flash, and then bottom right. You could press top left, and that makes the minutes and hours go down, and that is setting the high tide for Exeter, which is just a beachy place, not a million miles away from me. It's kind of like Dartmoor area where I do my camping. Check out my camping channel, of course. My name, Tony Hobbs. And that is how you set high tide.
For best accuracy, set for the first high tide of the day, and obviously monitor it weekly.
And then you just press top right, and that comes out of it. And that now is high tide set. So you notice here, it's showing the tide time for 6 AM. So when you want to know what the tide is for 3:30, so you go to 2, 3, 4. So you can see that for 3-4 o'clock it's flashing high tide. Now obviously it doesn't give you the tide times exactly, like a Garmin smartwatch or an app or something like that, but it gives you a rough idea of where the tide is in relation to you. Press that button there, bottom right. You can't go back on it, you can only go forward, unfortunately. And then when you've set it, just go back to your main time, and you can see that for your port tide time, you can see that we are showing 1:30, and obviously we're getting fairly close to our high tide there, indicating that. So when it gets to the end of there, then it will start over here, high tide, go to low, and then back up to high. I hope you found this little video helpful and useful on this GWF 1000. This is quite an old watch now. I think this was brought out in 2009, and I wanted to try and work out how the tide details worked, and I couldn't for the life of me see very much online for doing this. I couldn't find any videos, but I did luckily find the instructions, so I read them, and I have done this little video for you. So I hope you find this useful. Please put a like, subscribe, share, put a comment below if you enjoyed this, or if you've got any comments, suggestions, or anything like that, would be much appreciated. And I will see you in the next one, and I'll try and do some more videos on this watch in the future, especially if you are interested. Drop a comment below. See you again soon. Thanks for watching.